Hi, well, if you saw the last episode, you will have seen that I suggested it might have been a good idea to have some fun with the Italian fans in Monza by setting fire to a Ferrari flag in the pit lane. Um, Fortunately, I saw that that wasn't going to be such a good idea. Um, so yeah, we closed the garage doors in the end, and we packed up and went off back to our hotel, probably at midnight, something like that, getting ready for the next day. Anyway, Ivan Capelli, he qualified 11th on the grid, and we'd spent all this time setting up the car, and we were hopeful of a reasonable finish there. But anyway, the race started, and there's a long straight down to the first chicane in Monza. And when Ivan got down to the first chicane, he banged wheels with whoever, and it was quite a big bump, but he was driving around, and he did lap after lap. In the end, he finished fifth, which was fabulous for us because it was another couple of points in the bag, and we were starting to, late now, we're starting to make some real good inroads into some of the more established teams, and finishing fifth was fantastic. Anyway, after the race, for those that don't know, the cars have to go into a parc ferme area where they're scrutinised after the race to make sure that all the cars are legal and everything like that. Well, I went down with one or two of the other guys and had a look at the car, and one of Ivan's steering arms, part of the suspension, was bent like that. So consequently, all of the setup work that we did with me sat in the car for 4 hours was null and void, really, because would have knocked the whole car out of whack. And I got back to the garage, and we pushed the car back to the garage, and I said to Ivan, I said, have you seen your steering arm? He says, I won't do Italian accent, but he says, oh, Eddie, he said, I thought there was a problem. He said, but I couldn't see what it was. He says, but I drove round it. He said, I finished fifth. He said, the car was good. Apart from that, he said, it felt strange. He said, steering wheel wasn't central. So anyway, our chief mechanic, Harvey, I think he said to Adrian Newey afterwards, he says, don't you ever keep my boys sat on the flat patch for 4 hours at night. He said, trying to find half a millimetre with a bloody ruler and a piece of fishing line. He said, look what we can do without all of that messing about. We all know that you've got to have the optimum setup on the car, but sometimes when you've got a driver that can drive around the problems, then, the problems are alleviated. Ivan was good at that. So the next race is, bearing in mind as well, I think that was the race because McLaren in '88 won 15 out of the 16 races, and that was the one. Monza was the one race they didn't win because I think Jean-Louis Schlesser was depping for Williams because I think I don't know, it was Nigel Mansell or Patrese. I think they'd been ill or they'd had a shunt or something. So this sports car driver, Jean-Louis Schlesser, he had an accident, and I think he bumped Prost off or Senna or one of them. So anyway, that made the McLaren didn't win that race. Actually, Ferrari won it, and I think that was the last race that I think it was maybe Enzo Ferrari had died that weekend or something. I think it was a race that I'm pretty sure Berger won that one. But anyway, as usual, the experts among you will know, and you can look at all the results for that. But the next race we had was in Estoril in Portugal, and this was probably, in my time there, this was the best result that we had, because Capelli finished second, and it was the first podium for the team, in the first full season of racing, really, and it was a fantastic result, and it was the cue for one of the best parties that we'd ever had. I mentioned in the last one, Carlos Nunes. Well, Carlos, as you can probably tell from the name, Carlos was Portuguese, and I'm not quite sure whether him or some of his family. Anyway, they came from there's a little fishing village by Estoril called Cascais, which is a beautiful place. I'll touch on Cascais later in the series when start talking about bringing the rock and roll into it. But Cascais was beautiful, and we'd finished second. So all of our sponsors, Philips Car Stereo, a Honda, and what have you, Carlos arranged for this for us all to go to this fish restaurant, and we had one hell of a party, and it was just fabulous. And I remember, one of our truckies, a lad called Biddy, he was an incredible character, a very, very funny guy. And I can see him now. If you've ever seen that guy years ago who was on Opportunity Knocks, and he used to do mule train with a beer tray, and it was, mule train, bang, 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 and he was smashing his head with it. Well, Biddy could do this absolutely perfectly. And I can see him now, stood on the side of this. In this restaurant, there was a big pool in the middle of it, and what they were doing was all the lobsters were in there, and they would bring them to your table, and you pick your own lobster, and that was your meal. So it's off to the kitchen and sort it out. But Biddy was on the side of this pool doing his mule train, and then he suddenly dived in with all these lobsters and these fish and everything like that, and it was just hilarious. And I think a lot of the Honda guys, the Japanese guys, were in the restaurant at the same time. And then the Japanese are usually quite a reserved bunch. But once we started hurling bread rolls at them and everything like that, it just got wild, and it was fantastic. And Honda even said to us later, I think they told Ian Phillips or something like that, it was one of the best nights that they'd had. And yeah, those are the sort of things. In later years, you'd got teams like Jordan, with Eddie Jordan. They were a big party team, but even in those days, I worked for both. I had good times with Jordan, but the times we had with Leighton House were biblical at times, and I'm keeping my powder dry on a lot of the things, but they were funny days. So we go off. I think the final European race was in Spain, and again, not a lot to report, but I'm probably going to go off a little bit here, because I'm thinking a lot of these funny stories as I go along. But it was in Spain, but this was possibly the year before. But this tale is worth telling. I've mentioned this guy, this big lad called Marcus, who worked for us, and Marcus was a young fella, but he was a great big specimen of a fella. He was a big unit. And all of our team gear used to come from Japan. All the Green Lake House stuff and everything. Well, Japanese are small guys, and consequently, most of the team gear that are sent us, I mean, like a double XL or something, used to be fit me, and I'm just a little chap. But they couldn't find any shirts to fit Marcus, so consequently, he very often just didn't wear a shirt. He just used to wear an apron and a pair of shorts. But this one time, and I know this was in Jerez in Spain, Marcus was going to, I think, what was it, Harvey, our chief mechanic, he'd said to Marcus, he'd probably, I think he only had one pair of shorts, because they were the only ones that had fit him. And Harvey said to Marcus, he says, "Can't you take those shorts off, Marcus?" And Marcus had got this pinny on, this apron. So Marcus he's going to set up all of the timing pit boards and everything up on the pit wall. So he's walked through the garage, and he's got his apron on, and that's it. He was setting up the pit wall, and all he could see was this big hairy arse. And I think that we'd got a lot of sponsors had come in, and Marcus comes back into the garage, walks up the steps into the truck, and Harvey follows him, and the steps of the truck are probably about 5 foot high. I think Harvey cleared them in one jump. he tore Marcus off a right strip for that. But Marcus, I could just see his face now. It was just under his moustache, a big grin and everything. But that was a funny moment. That was.